Slap. Go to hell. It's over. Choose real loud.
If you want to get more closely acquainted with Vergil's doppelganger mechanic, I strongly encourage you to watch my first video, which is basically this doppelganger guide, where I go very in-depth into the basics, the rudimentary aspects of this mechanic. The link to that video will be in the description below, so yeah. So first things first, before I start talking about the combo and the mistakes you can make and all that jazz, I should preface this by talking about my controls. So I play this game using my mouse and keyboard. Yeah, really. Blasphemy, I know. But I think that if you've ever played a single game on your PC using a mouse and a keyboard, these controls should be familiar to you. I think they're very easy to grasp. So, just like with almost every game ever, WASD are the keys you use for movement. So W is forward, S is backwards, A is left, D is right. This is the equivalent to you using your analog stick for moving, like tilting it left, right, forward, backward. That's basically what I use. So again, W forward, S backward, A left, D right. Obviously, just like in every game ever, space is jump. So I jump using space. The left mouse button, unsurprisingly, is the attack button. Also, like in every game ever. The right mouse button is the button I use for mirage blades. So all my mirage blade attacks are mapped to the right button. The right mouse button, I mean. So that's basically it for these basic controls. Shift is the button I use for locking on. So when I lock on, I press Shift. In this game, you gotta be locked on for just about any attack ever. Only under specific circumstances should you release the lock on. But yeah, basically lock on is Shift in my case. So next up, we've got the trick action. So, trick up, down, air trick, all that stuff. I use E, so E is the button I use. So if I press E without locking on, that is trick up. If I press E while locking on, like Shift plus E, that is air trick, and I teleport. If I press back to forward plus E, or S plus W plus E, that is trick down. So, like I said, E is the trick action. That's the button I use for tricking, basically. R is the button I use for taunting, so that's the taunt button. Air taunts, lock-on taunts, doesn't matter. R is the button you gotta press for taunting. Moving on, I have F, and F is the button I use to charge my Sin Double trigger. So I press and hold F, then I release it, and I basically go into my Sin Double trigger mode. Moving on, we also have 1 and 2. So 1 is the button for changing the weapon to the right. So my layout is as follows. I use the default layout for my weapons, my arsenal. So it goes Yamato, Beowulf, Mirage Edge. So if I have the Yamato equipped and I press 1, it will switch to Beowulf, which is the weapon to its right. And if I press 1 again, it will switch from Beowulf to the Mirage Edge, which is the weapon to its right. If I have the Yamato equipped, and I press 2, it will go to the weapon that's on its left, and that is the Mirage Edge. If I press 2 again, it will switch to Beowulf. If I press 2 again, it will once again switch to the Yamato. So that's how this works. We're switching weapons left and right. That's how it works. Moving on, we have the doppelganger buttons. So the buttons are as follows. X is the slow doppelganger. This is a doppelganger that is kind of delayed by about, I don't know, half a second or something. So that's X. C is the normal Doppelganger. He is slightly delayed, not by half a second, but, like, he's just not completely in sync with you. So that's C. And V is the haste version of the Doppelganger who is completely in sync with you, meaning that he immediately reacts to your commands and he mimics your inputs. He registers them immediately and simply reacts to them. So, yeah. I deactivate the Doppelganger by pressing Z. So that's how I do it. And, you know, that's pretty much... those are all the controls, really. There are some other things like... you know, using CTRL to basically lock onto multiple targets, or, I mean, switch the lock on, stuff like that, or using the arrows, using, you know, it just doesn't matter, really. These are the main things that you will need. So, if I say, I'm pressing D plus left mouse button, that means that I'm pressing right plus attack button. If I say I'm pressing S plus W plus left mouse button, that means I'm pressing back to forward plus attack button. Kind of like tilting your analog stick back and then forward and then pressing the attack button. So that's how it works. If I say back to forward plus right mouse button, or S plus W plus right mouse button, that is basically back to forward plus your mirage blade button. So heavy rain blades in my case. But don't worry, most of the time, like 99% of the time, I'll say right plus attack button instead of D plus left mouse button, because I feel like that's more universally comprehensible, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, these are my controls, and now let's talk about the actual combo. Alright, so now we got the pit combo, and I know I say this a lot, but this is one of the most difficult combos on the list. Probably top 3, I don't really know. I'd venture to say it's the most difficult combo on the list, and I don't say that lightly. So, this is a combo by Maker T, namely his Vergil Doppelganger combo 2. It's the second most viewed combo on his channel, and this is basically a 1-to-1. The only difference between his version and mine is that I use the blistering blades instead of the storm blades before Judgment Cut End. But aside from that, there's really not... there's no difference, really. And there is a similarity. There are a lot of similarities between this combo and the Heaven combo in terms of not difficulty per se, but, you know, like, every combo can be divided into parts, but I divided the Heaven combo analysis into 2 parts. Part 1, which is the first 2 seconds of the combo that warrant a 40-minute long explanation, and the rest of the analysis is basically part 2 of the combo, which is the rest of the combo. And with the Heaven combo, these first 2 seconds of the combo are so excruciatingly difficult that I simply had to analyze that first part, those first 2 seconds, before I could move on to the rest of the combo. And it's the same with this combo, except the first part isn't 2 seconds long, it is 6 seconds long. So the first 6 seconds of this combo are so excruciatingly difficult, and inexplicably so, that I'll probably have to analyze this stuff. Like, this analysis will probably be like an hour long. Just these 6 seconds, bro. But unlike the Heaven combo, where if you do the first part of the combo successfully, it's mostly smooth sailing from there, with the pit combo, even if you finish this incredibly difficult first part of the combo, the second part of the combo is riddled with, like, so many opportunities, so many windows for you to make so many different mistakes. I can't even start. Oh my god, man. Like, it is, like, you know, at least with the Heaven combo, you know that, okay, this part of the combo, the first 2 seconds, it's really difficult, but at least now I know there's a high chance I will end up doing the combo successfully. But with the pit combo, it's like, nah, bro, nah. Yeah, I know that I basically just finished this insanely impossible part, you know, first part, but now I have so many opportunities to fail, and it's just really sad. Like I said, here you can see how I just skipped the whole first part of the combo, and I started with the second part. There is no shame in doing this. You're saving yourself neurons, you're saving yourself so much stress and anxiety. And honestly, just between you and me, I don't even think this part of the combo looks all that cool. I don't even think it's that impressive. Like, I mean, compared to the rest of the combo, which is this crazy doppelganger stuff, this is the least interesting part. I mean, it's basically a loop. Oh, wow. Trick up, air stinger, starfall, overdrive. And then, again, trick up, air stinger, starfall. It's like, wow, so cool. Now, of course, that isn't to say that it's, like, bad. It's just not nearly as exciting as the rest of the combo. But the rest of the combo is also excruciatingly difficult, with so many mistakes that you can make at so many different points. But, you know, that being said, it's not like this combo is absolutely unfeasible, like absolutely impossible to perform. And this, like, it's kind of crazy how with the Heaven combo as well, like the first part of the combo, the first 2 seconds, which are arguably the most uneventful 2 seconds of the combo, are the hardest. Like, that's the hardest part of the combo. And the most interesting part with the doppelganger is actually comparatively easy, you know? Now, like I said, this, like, my point is to teach you how to use Vergil, how to use interesting setups, and mostly how to use the doppelganger. You don't have to abide by everything that I do and say. You don't have to adhere to this, to the way that I do these combos. Like, you can skip the first part. There is no shame in doing that. You can start the combo with lunar phase, and it'll still work. And that's arguably the most important part of the combo anyway. And it's way, you know, you can encounter mistakes there, but at least it won't make you claw your skin off. Alright, so you need to have the Mirage Edge equipped, and you need to use High Time 2. So this is the version of High Time that launches Vergil into the air alongside the enemy. And while using High Time, which is left plus holding the attack button, you let go of the lock-on, and you use Trick Up. So it's very important that you let go of the lock-on, because if you don't, you'll end up using air tricks. So, yeah. So anyway, like I said, you use High Time, you let go of the lock-on, and you use Trick Up. Now you immediately follow this up with Air Stinger. And while using Air Stinger, you throw a few Mirage Blades at the enemy. For the time being, I won't specify exactly how many Mirage Blades you're supposed to throw, but believe me, I will talk about this at length in a hot minute. So yeah, anyway, you throw a couple of Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger. For this particular example, let's say, you know, I basically threw 4 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Air Stinger, okay? So now that you're done with Air Stinger, you switch to Beowulf, and you use Starfall. And you make sure to graze the enemy. Now, when you're done with Starfall, you immediately switch back to the Mirage Edge, and you use Overdrive. And at this point, like before, like after the second hit of Overdrive, you once again throw a couple of Mirage Blades at the enemy. Again, I don't want to specify, but in this example in particular, I used 6 Mirage Blades. So I threw 6 Mirage Blades at the enemy to prevent them from falling to the ground. I mean, obviously, this is the reason why we have to throw the Mirage Blades, because if we don't throw any Mirage Blades at the enemy, they will fall to the ground, and the combo obviously fails. So anyway, now that you've done Overdrive, you let go of the lock-on, and once again, you use Trick Up. Now, the enemy will be caught by the Overdrive beam, and you once again use Air Stinger, okay? And now, once again, you switch back to Beowulf, and you use Starfall. In the millisecond you make contact with the enemy, you immediately use Trig Down to descend to the ground. And this is basically the end of the first part of the combo. And now, we're gonna talk at length about everything that can go wrong in this part of the combo. I'm gonna keep it a $150, bro. Like, I'm gonna be completely transparent. I don't even know where to start. Like, this first part of the combo warrants a longer explanation than the entirety of the Heaven combo. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it will be longer than 40 minutes, I'm pretty sure. And this is the main reason why I've been delaying analyzing this combo for so long. It's not just that it's difficult to, like, first I needed to, like, understand why these mistakes were occurring, why they were happening, what was the main cause, and then it dawned on me time and time again, like so many times, I would reach a new conclusion, and I basically understood at the very end that there are multiple factors here, so many variables that you gotta factor in, that you gotta take into account, and I just, like, it's one thing to even, like, take note of all this, but trying to explain it in a comprehensive way that would be easy for people to understand, that is a whole other beast, bro. So, wish me luck, here goes nothing. Alright, so there are basically two instances in this first part of the combo where you're supposed to throw a few Mirage Blades at the enemy. The first instance is while using Air Stinger after Trick Up, so that's the first instance. The second instance is while using Overdrive after Starfall. So, throwing the Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and throwing Mirage Blades during Overdrive, alright? So, with that out of the way, let's take a gander at these most common mistakes that I've been talking about. So, like I said, there are two types of mistakes, well, two of the most common types of mistakes that you can make during this part of the combo. And even though that doesn't sound like a lot, believe me, they occur so many times that it's absolutely insane. Alright, so here you can see how I threw 3 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Overdrive, and what ended up happening was the enemy fell to the ground too fast before being caught by the Overdrive beam. In other words, what ended up happening was the enemy lost too much altitude too soon. But conversely, here, you can see how I threw 5 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Overdrive, and what ended up happening was the enemy didn't lose enough altitude, so they were caught by the Overdrive beam, but they were too high up on the Overdrive beam, so when I attempted to use Trick Up and then Air Stinger, what ended up happening was I hit this invisible wall. So I basically hit the enemy instead of going over the enemy, you know? Because you're supposed to go over the enemy with Air Stinger, not hit this invisible wall. So these are two polar opposites, right? So either the enemy falls to the ground and they lose altitude too fast, or they don't lose enough altitude and they get caught by the Overdrive beam, but they're too high up on the Overdrive beam, so you can't continue the combo. You end up hitting this invisible wall. So it's like, pick your poison, right? So I started brainstorming, I was racking my brain, trying to figure out what this depends on. And basically, the first and most logical explanation was the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw at the enemy while using Overdrive. You know, the first time I threw 3 Mirage Blades at the enemy, and it clearly wasn't enough. And the second time, I threw 5 Mirage Blades, and that was clearly too much. So I decided to throw 4 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Overdrive. Like, I thought that would be the golden standard, you know, the middle ground. Because, you know, clearly, you know, 3 was not enough, and the enemy ended up falling to the ground, and 5 was too many, so let's try 4. And I throw 4 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Overdrive, and what ended up happening was the enemy fell to the ground once again. Meaning that even 4 Mirage Blades was not enough. I should have thrown more. So I'm like, but wait, last time I threw 5 Mirage Blades, it was too many. So I'm like, alright, let's try this again. So this time, I throw 4 Mirage Blades at the enemy once again, but conversely, this time, the enemy ends up getting caught by the Overdrive beam, but they're too high up in the air, and I end up hitting the invisible wall. So, in the last example, 4 Mirage Blades was not enough, and the enemy ended up falling to the ground because, you know, they lost too much altitude. But in this case, 4 Mirage Blades was too many. And then check this out. I basically did the exact same thing. I threw 4 Mirage Blades at the enemy, and it worked. So this got me thinking. I was like brainstorming. I was like trying to think, what is this? What's the explanation? And basically, it's the distance between you and the enemy. Alright, so remember that example I showed you where I basically threw 3 Mirage Blades at the enemy and it wasn't enough because, you know, the enemy lost altitude too fast and they fell to the ground before the overdrive beam could catch them. Meaning that I didn't throw enough Mirage Blades. I should have thrown more. So this led me to believe that 3 Mirage Blades was simply, you know, not enough. But then look at this. I throw 3 Mirage Blades here. Again. And this time, it's too much. And the enemy ends up, you know, not losing enough altitude, and they're caught on the overdrive beam, but they're too high up on the overdrive beam, so when I use Trick Up and Air Stinger, I end up hitting this invisible wall, and I can't go over the enemy. So in the previous example, it wasn't enough Mirage Blades, so 3 wasn't enough. In this example, 3 is too much. In the example that I'm about to show you, 3 Mirage Blades was just enough, and the combo ended up working. So, one thing that we really need to account for here is the distance between Vergil and the enemy during overdrive. If you look at this first example where, as you can see, you know, I threw 3 Mirage Blades but the enemy fell to the ground, you can see how Vergil was he was considerably far away from the enemy. So, naturally, logic dictates that the enemy will lose altitude faster, and this example would have required me to use more Mirage Blades. But in the other example, where the opposite happened, where, you know, the enemy was caught by the overdrive beam, but they were too high up in the air, and then I ended up hitting this invisible wall, I was very, very close to the enemy. So, as you can see, when you are far away from the enemy, you need to throw more Mirage Blades, because if you don't throw enough, the enemy won't be in the air for as long, and they will fall to the ground before the overdrive beam can even reach them. So the farther you are from the enemy, the more Mirage Blades you have to throw. But the closer you are to the enemy, the fewer Mirage Blades you're supposed to throw. So you're supposed to throw less Mirage Blades. So, you know, because obviously if you throw too many Mirage Blades, the enemy will not lose enough altitude, and they will be caught on the overdrive beam, and then you'll hit this invisible wall. So, alright, we've established that. So, it's not just the amount of Mirage Blades you throw, it's also the distance. So, these two factors are related. You know, they correspond with one another. So, alright, we got that out of the way. But this begs the question, why? Why is the distance always different? What if I told you there was a myriad of factors that actually influences this? But let's talk about the most obvious one, and I think it's like the most logical one. So you know how you're supposed to throw a couple of Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Air Stinger, right? Well, the more Mirage Blades you throw at the enemy while using Air Stinger, the slower the enemy will lose altitude. And the fewer Mirage Blades you throw at the enemy, the faster the enemy will lose altitude. So, I think it stands to reason that, obviously, the more Mirage Blades you throw, the enemy will stay in the air for, you know, much longer. Because let's look at this example. So I'm on the ground, the enemy is in the air. I throw 7 Mirage Blades, and the enemy is in the air for a long time. But here, I throw 3 Mirage Blades, and the enemy falls to the ground a lot faster. So it's basic logic, obviously. So the thing is, right, the fewer, well, let's not say fewer, even though it's grammatically correct, maybe some people will find that confusing. So the less Mirage Blades you throw at the enemy, right, the faster they will start losing altitude. And you can see that there, in some instances, I don't throw enough Mirage Blades at the enemy, and they are almost, like, they're just about to fall to the ground. So the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw at the enemy will basically determine their altitude. The more you throw, the higher they'll be up in the air. The less you throw, the lower they will be in the air. And that ultimately determines the distance between Vergil and the enemy after Vergil uses Starfall. And this also directly corresponds to the amount of Mirage Blades you're supposed to throw during overdrive, and all these factors are basically related. So take these two examples. So in this example, I throw 4 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Air Stinger, and you'll see how the enemy doesn't even start losing altitude. Like, they're still in the air, they don't start falling before I use Starfall. So I end up grazing them with Starfall, and as a result, I am considerably far away from the enemy. But in this example, I throw 2 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Air Stinger, and you can see how, well, now the enemy just starts losing altitude and they're almost going to fall to the ground before I graze them with Starfall. And now, as a result, I am pretty close to the enemy because they were closer to the ground before I used Starfall. But this isn't consistent, and I'll talk about that later, but you get the point. So I throw less Mirage Blades, and, you know, I only throw 2, and the enemy starts losing altitude faster, and when I use Starfall, you know, when I land, when I hit the ground, the enemy is basically, you know, close to the ground because they started losing altitude way faster because I didn't throw more Mirage Blades. But in the first example, where I threw 4 Mirage Blades, you'll notice how the enemy didn't even get to start losing altitude before I hit them with Starfall, and they were higher up in the air, and as a result, when I landed Starfall, when I hit the ground, I was farther away from the enemy. But like I said, it can be the polar opposite. But here's the thing. There are a few inconsistencies here. So the first pattern that I established was that the lower the enemy is in the air, like the closer they are to the ground, meaning that you didn't throw enough Mirage Blades, usually, when Vergil uses Starfall, he will be closer to the enemy when their altitude is pretty low, right? So he'll be closer. And when you throw more Mirage Blades and the enemy is higher up in the air, when you use Starfall, you will be farther away from the enemy. So there will be more distance between Vergil and the enemy that way. But then, that was the first pattern that I established. But then I saw the polar opposite happen. Check this out. Here I only throw 1 Mirage Blade at the enemy. Of course, they lose an insane amount of altitude, and they actually fall to the ground. And after I use Starfall, I am pretty far away from the enemy. So, does this mean that the lower the enemy's altitude is, the farther away from the enemy you'll be? And you can see the same thing happen here. I throw 2 Mirage Blades at the enemy here while using Air Stinger, and then I use Starfall. And once again, I am very far away from the enemy. So, according to this, this would naturally lead you to conclude that, okay, so basically the lower the enemy, the closer the enemy is to the ground before I use Starfall, the farther away I will be after using Starfall, while using Overdrive. But then, check this out. Here I threw 2 Mirage Blades at the enemy while using Air Stinger, and I was incredibly close to the enemy after Starfall, as you can see. What gives, right? Like, the enemy was close to the ground, but after using Starfall, I'm not far away from the enemy, I'm actually close. Oh, and you want more inconsistencies? Well, I gotcha, bro. Here, I throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger, I use Starfall, and I am incredibly far away from the enemy. So much so, in fact, that throwing 3 Mirage Blades during Overdrive was not enough. I should have thrown more. So, it's like, huh? How exactly does this work? So, I was like, alright, look, we know a few things for certain. We know that the amount of Mirage Blades you throw at the enemy while using Overdrive is incredibly important. We also know that the distance between you and the enemy while Vergil is using overdrive is what will basically determine how many mirage blades you're supposed to throw at the enemy. The farther you are from the enemy while using overdrive, the more mirage blades you'll have to throw. The closer you are to the enemy, the fewer mirage blades you'll have to throw. Because, you know, if you are too far away and you don't throw enough mirage blades, the enemy falls to the ground. If you're too close and you throw too many mirage blades, the enemy, you know, you get the invisible wall glitch. And we've already established that this depends on the enemy's altitude before Vergil uses Starfall. And we've also kind of, like, semi-established that this also depends on the amount of mirage blades you throw at the enemy while using Air Stinger. But then how do you account for all these inconsistencies? How come sometimes when I use Starfall and the enemy is like really close to the ground, how come sometimes I'm really close to the enemy after that and sometimes I'm really far away? So what exactly is going on here? There's got to be something else. And there is. Oh man, it has to do with the timing, with your timing and your speed. So basically, I started analyzing all these like instances where I would try so many patterns and so many combinations, so many variables to see which variable would work, right? I was trying to like search for the best pattern. Like, will 2 + 2 work? Like throwing 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using, you know, Overdrive? But it was all to no avail. Check this out. Here I threw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive. What ended up happening was basically I didn't throw enough Mirage Blades. Apparently I was farther away from the enemy than I thought, and the enemy fell to the ground before Overdrive could come out. In this example, I also threw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, but in this case, it worked perfectly, because I apparently calculated the distance perfectly. Alright, you've already seen these instances. I throw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger, and I throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it wasn't enough. The enemy fell to the ground. Too much distance, not enough Mirage Blades. In this case, I also throw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 3 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, but in this case, 3 Mirage Blades was too much, and apparently I was closer to the enemy than I thought, and I should have thrown less, or well, fewer Mirage Blades. In this case, I also throw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 3 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it worked perfectly. I calculated the distance perfectly. In this example, I throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it wasn't enough. The enemy fell to the ground. Too much distance, not enough Mirage Blades. In this case, in this example, I basically also do the same. I throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and this time 2 Mirage Blades was too many. So I was too close to the enemy. I miscalculated, and basically, I guess I should have thrown less, or well, fewer Mirage Blades at the enemy. What ended up happening was the invisible wall glitch, so yay. And in this case, I also throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it worked perfectly. Here I throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 3 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive. It was not enough, and the enemy ended up falling to the ground. I should have thrown more. Apparently there was too much distance. In this example, I also throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 3 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, but apparently I was too close to the enemy, and 3 Mirage Blades was too much. It was too many. I should have thrown fewer Mirage Blades. What ended up happening was the invisible wall glitch. And in this case, I throw 3 Mirage Blades at the enemy and 3 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it worked perfectly. Here I threw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 4 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it wasn't enough. The enemy ended up falling to the ground. In this case, I also do the same. 3 while using Air Stinger, 4 while using Overdrive, but this time it was too many. and the enemy ended up, you know, the invisible wall glitch happened. And here I throw 3 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 4 while using Overdrive, and it worked perfectly. Here I throw 4 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 3 while using Overdrive, and it wasn't enough, the enemy ended up falling to the ground. But here, I did the same thing, 4 during Air Stinger, 3 during Overdrive, and the enemy, it worked. It worked perfectly. And don't forget, in the analysis, in the combo example that I used for this analysis, like the perfect example, I threw 4 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger, and 6 while using Overdrive, because I was incredibly far away from the enemy. Like, in the example I used for the analysis, the enemy didn't lose that much altitude. They weren't really close to the ground. But after using Starfall, I was very far away from the enemy. So naturally, I needed more Mirage Blades, and 6 was enough. So all of this is just to show you how inconsistent this whole thing is. You can't get this right by trying to get the amount of Mirage Blades right. There's no perfect combination. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And this all depends on your timing. All of these factors that I've stated, the enemy's altitude, the distance between you and the enemy, the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw during Air Stinger, the amount of Mirage Blades you throw during Overdrive, all of these factors are mutually dependent. You know, they depend on one another. But there are also other things at play, things that are not even visible, things that you can't even get down with muscle memory. And these things pertain to the timing. Now, what do I mean by timing? Well, after putting all these videos side by side and comparing them, I wanted to, like, see what was different. I wanted to look for some disparities, you know, some discrepancies, if you will, and just see why this instance works and this one doesn't. Alright, so now let's do a few side-by-side comparisons. So here you can see how on the left side, I throw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and it was not enough, so the enemy ended up falling to the ground. Meaning that, well, basically, 2 Mirage Blades was simply not enough. But on the right side, I do the exact same thing. I throw 2 Mirage Blades while using Air Stinger and 2 while using Overdrive, but the combo ends up working. So let's see what I did differently on the right side as opposed to the left side. Alright, so pay very close attention to my commands, like my keyboard and my mouse. Like, I've highlighted a lot of these things, so anyway. So, on the left side, so here you can see how I seem to use Trick Up slightly earlier on the right side. And I start throwing the Mirage Blades at around the same time. I feel like I started throwing the Mirage Blades slightly earlier on the right. But even though I started throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right, I threw them faster on the left side. So it's like, I throw 1 Mirage Blade, and then I take longer before throwing the second Mirage Blade on the right. On the left side, I actually start throwing the Mirage Blades a frame later, but I finish throwing them way earlier. Still, I don't know if this is really relevant. So here you can see how on the right side, I seem to start Starfall a few frames earlier, and I don't know if this is relevant either. So, you know, I'm just pointing out every difference that I see. So I seem to be closer to the enemy on the left side than when I'm on the right side. And I start Overdrive earlier on the right side. And on the right side, I also throw the Mirage Blades later. Only after assuming the position for the final hit of Overdrive, that's when I start throwing the Mirage Blades. On the left side, I actually start throwing it way earlier during the second hit of Overdrive before it even fully comes out. And as a result, the enemy didn't lose enough altitude. They didn't lose altitude as fast on the right side, and they were caught in time. Alright, so now we got another side-by-side comparison. So here you'll see how on the left side, I throw 2 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 3 during Overdrive, and as a result, the enemy ends up falling to the ground. However, on the right side, I do the same thing, you know, 2 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 3 during Overdrive, but the enemy is caught, and, well, basically the combo ends up working. So let's see what I did differently. So you'll see how I use Trick Up slightly later on the right side, but even though I input Trick Up later, I appear earlier in the air. I don't know. So I throw the Mirage Blades later on the right, and I also use Starfall later on the right. I also use Overdrive later on the right, but funnily enough, I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right, so during the start of the second hit of Overdrive. On the left, I basically start throwing the Mirage Blades during the end of the second hit of Overdrive. And I also throw the Mirage Blades a lot faster on the right. So that's like, these are all the differences that I could spot here. Alright, so here you can see how I throw 2 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 3 during Overdrive. And on the left side, I actually encountered the overdrive issue, so I hit this invisible wall, so apparently 3 Mirage Blades was too much. But on the right side, I do the exact same thing, 2 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 3 during Overdrive, and the combo ends up working. So let's see what I did differently. So apparently I used Trick Up earlier, like I input Trick Up earlier on the left side, but at the same time I appear at the same time on the right side. And I can see that I throw the Mirage Blades later on the right side, and I also use Starfall later on the right side, and I also start Overdrive later on the right side. However, I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right side, before assuming the position for the final hit of Overdrive. So, those are the differences that I was able to spot here. Alright, so here you can see how I throw 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 2 during Overdrive, and on the left side, the enemy ends up falling to the ground, so that was not enough. But on the right side, I do the exact same thing, 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 2 during Overdrive, and the combo ends up working perfectly, so let's see what I did differently. Alright, so apparently, on the right side, I use Trick Up at around the same time, on the left and on the right side. I throw the Mirage Blades later on the right side. I use Starfall later on the right side. I start Overdrive later on the right side. And I start throwing the Mirage Blades later on the right side. And the enemy, they're kind of on they're at a lower altitude on the left. Like, they're closer to the ground, so that's one of the, those are all the differences I was able to spot here. Alright, so here you'll see how, basically, it's kind of the same thing, like I throw 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 2 during Overdrive, and on the left side, I encounter the, the Overdrive issue with the invisible wall, but on the right side, it's the same thing, 3 plus 2, and the combo ends up working. So let's see what I did differently here. Alright, so you'll see how I actually input Trick Up earlier on the right side, but I appear at around, the same time on both sides in the air. Alright, so I throw the Mirage Blades at the exact same time, I start Overdrive at the exact same time, but I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right. So that's, I think that's the deciding factor here, honestly. Alright, so now we got this. So here I actually, on the left side, you'll see how I throw 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 3 during Overdrive, and as a result, the enemy ends up falling to the ground. But on the right side, I do the exact same thing, 3 during Air Stinger, 3 during Overdrive, and the combo works perfectly. So apparently, I use Trick Up later on the right side, and I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right side. I think I use Starfall earlier on the right side, and also I use Overdrive earlier on the right side. And I also start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right side. But it's later during the Overdrive. after the second hit has almost hit the enemy. On the left side, I start throwing the Mirage Blades a little after the second hit comes out. So, yeah. Alright, so here you'll see how I also, it's 3 plus 3, so, 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger, 3 during Overdrive, and on the left side you'll see how the enemy, they're too high up on the Overdrive beam, so I ended up hitting the invisible wall. But on the right side, same thing, but it works. So it's 3 plus 3, but the combo works. So on the right side, I use Trick Up later, and I also start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right side. And I also start Starfall earlier on the right side. And I also start Overdrive earlier on the right side. I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right side, but it was later during Overdrive. So after the second hit went through the enemy. Meanwhile, on the left, I waited for Vergil to start assuming the position for the final hit of Overdrive before I started throwing the Mirage Blades. So the enemy lost a lot of altitude, a lot faster on the right, and the combo worked. Alright, so here you'll see how I throw 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 4 during Overdrive, and on the left side, the enemy hits the ground, but on the right side, the combo works. So, let's see what I did differently. So, on the right side, I used Trick Up earlier, I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right, I also start Starfall earlier on the right, I also start Overdrive earlier on the right, and I also start throwing the Mirage Blades later on the right. So basically on the left side, I start throwing the Mirage Blades as soon as I start the second hit of Overdrive. But on the right side, I start throwing the Mirage Blades a while after the second hit comes out. So, yeah. Alright, so here you'll see how, it's the same thing, like I throw 3 Mirage Blades during Air Stinger and 4 during Overdrive. On the left side, the enemy ends up, I encounter the invisible wall issue with Overdrive, but on the right side, the combo works. So, let's see what I did differently. So, on the right side, I use Trick Up earlier, but I appear at around the same time on both sides. I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right. I also start Starfall earlier on the right. And I start Overdrive slightly later on the right, but it's like by 1 frame. And I start throwing the Mirage Blades earlier on the right side. So, there you have it. So, these are, some of the side-by-side comparisons that I could make. And I hope you've learned something from this. To be completely honest with you, I don't even know. Like, it seems that the most imperative factors, the most important factors are the distance between you and the enemy after Starfall, and the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw, and the enemy's altitude, and all these, factors are mutually correlated somehow, and it's like, I feel like one of the main things is knowing when to start throwing the Mirage Blades while using Overdrive, and also how early you gotta start Overdrive, but this is all completely up in the air because it's not consistent. You simply can't know this. You can't know. There's no definitive way. There's no way for me to tell you how to do this part of the combo properly. It's just not consistent. You just gotta keep trying, and all of this is basically for nothing. So it's basically the amount of time it takes for you to use Trick Up after High Time, the amount of time it takes for you to use Air Stinger after Trick Up, the amount of time it takes for you to start throwing the Mirage Blades during or before Air Stinger, the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw at the enemy during Air Stinger, the amount of time it takes for you to use Starfall after Air Stinger, the distance between you and the enemy after using Starfall, which directly corresponds to the enemy's altitude, which directly corresponds to the amount of Mirage Blades you threw during Air Stinger, and when you started throwing the Mirage Blades. Then it's like the amount of time it takes for you to start using Overdrive after Starfall, the amount of time it takes for you to start throwing the Mirage Blades during Overdrive, and the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw at the enemy during overdrive, which depends on the enemy's distance, or well, the distance between you and the enemy, which once again directly corresponds to all of the aforementioned factors. The distance, that depends on the enemy's altitude, that depends on the amount of mirage blades that you throw, that depends on the timing, and the time it takes for you to start throwing the mirage blades and execute every single one of these moves. Yeah. And you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the Wreckage combo. Now, I don't know if you remember, because the Wreckage combo was... I analyzed it, but I don't like I was using my old mic, like, the audio was pre-recorded, and my voice sounded really weird, so... But, basically in that combo, it's also a combo by Maker T. You have this instance where you're supposed to use overdrive, and then you input one mirage blade, and this one mirage blade embeds itself into the enemy, and then the enemy will be caught by the overdrive beam. But as is the case with this combo, the PID combo, in that combo too, if you input the mirage blade too early, the enemy falls to the ground. But if you input it too late, the enemy is caught by the overdrive beam, and they're too high up on the overdrive beam, and as a result, you can't use lunar phase, you can't jump cancel your lunar phase into Starfall because you're not making contact with the enemy properly, because they're too high up on the overdrive beam. So it's the exact same thing here, except the problem is when you use Air Stinger, you hit the invisible wall. So it's kind of the same. It seems that the most important thing in this combo, as was the case with the Wreckage combo, is knowing exactly when to input the Mirage Blades, when to start throwing the Mirage Blades while using overdrive. And if you do it too early or too late, because in the Wreckage combo, I try to ascertain, I try to see what the best timing was. You should do it after the second hit, but don't take too long, before assuming the position for the third hit. But, you have a few frames, a few windows. In this combo, it's kind of the same, basically. So you need to know exactly when to start throwing the Mirage Blades, after which hit. But it's not really the same at all, because, with the Wreckage combo, you only need to worry about the timing, because you only have one Mirage Blade that you gotta throw at the enemy. It's only a matter of when you're supposed to throw it. You can't throw it too early, you can't throw it too late. So it's all about the timing. Once you got the timing down, it's all smooth sailing from there, because it's only one Mirage Blade. But with the PID combo, you need perfect timing, but you also need to worry about the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw at the enemy. So you can't throw too many, you can't throw too few, and this depends on the distance between you and the enemy, and this is something you gotta gauge yourself. And, you just gotta have a feeling for it. It's a gamble. You just gotta gamble and pray that it actually works and that you've thrown enough Mirage Blades. So yeah, with the Wreckage combo, timing is of essence. That's the only thing you gotta worry about, but it's only one Mirage Blade. Here, it's the timing, the distance, and the amount of Mirage Blades that you throw, and it's always gonna be different, which makes this combo exponentially more difficult than the Wreckage combo. All these factors in conjunction with one another it just makes for an incredibly counterintuitive, agonizing combo, and it really encumbers what should in theory be a very simple combo. But be that as it may, like I said, it's not like this combo is completely unfeasible. It's not like it's, undoable. You can do it, but it's gonna result in a lot of, it's gonna be that constant trial and error thing before your endeavors yield any fruitful results, if that makes any sense. Alright, so now let's continue with the rest of the combo. So, after you've done Starfall, and again, let me reiterate, the millisecond you touch the enemy with Starfall, you immediately use Trig Down to descend to the ground, and now you use Lunar Phase with Beowulf, which is left plus attack button, and now you enemy step, you jump cancel this Lunar Phase, and you use Starfall. So basically what you do is you press left plus attack button, which is Lunar Phase, now you press jump to enemy step, and now you press the attack button to use Starfall. This will blow the enemy away, and at this point you switch to the Yamato and you wait just a little bit, a fraction of a millisecond, and you use Rapid Slash, but in this case you press left and you hold the attack button. And now you keep holding the attack button, you keep holding it, and now you use Air Trick to teleport to the enemy who is airborne, and now you release the attack button to do this Judgment Cut. That's why you basically gotta hold the attack button while using Rapid Slash. Now you immediately descend to the ground by using Trig Down once again, and now you immediately use Void Slash, which is back to forward plus attack button, and this will catch the enemy, thus preventing them from falling to the ground. And now you summon the slow version of the Doppelganger, and, well, this is the part that I gotta explain. Alright, so now I gotta talk about this setup that I always talk about, because, you know, it appears in the Pit combo, the Urban combo, the Night combo, the Ruin combo, the Wasteland combo, so many combos where you'll see this exact same setup. So, the way this works is, alright, so first of all, if you summon the haste version of the Doppelganger, you know, the Doppelganger that is in sync with you completely, and you use Rapid Slash, which is right plus attack button, both Vergil and the Doppelganger will end up using Rapid Slash in tandem, so they'll use it in sync at the exact same time, and that's because this is the Haze Doppelganger who is in sync with you. And it's the same if you use Rising Star, which is right plus holding the attack button. So Vergil and the Doppelganger will both use Rising Star at the same time. Alright? And if you have the slow version of the Doppelganger, like you summon the slow version of the Doppelganger, and you use Rapid Slash, which is right plus attack button, Vergil will use Rapid Slash, and then about half a second later, the Doppelganger will follow suit. Because this Doppelganger is not in sync with you. The slow Doppelganger is delayed, and he reacts to your commands about half a second after you actually, well, input the commands. So I press right plus attack button, Vergil does Rapid Slash immediately, but the Doppelganger needs time to process this because it's the slow Doppelganger and he's delayed, so he uses Rapid Slash a little less than half a second later. Alright, so that's how this works. However, what happens if I have the slow version of the Doppelganger active, and I use Rising Star, which is right plus holding the attack button? What's going to happen is Vergil will use Rising Star, and he will launch the enemy into the air. However, the Doppelganger will react to your commands, but since he's delayed, he will do it later. So what's going to happen is Vergil will use Rising Star, and the Doppelganger will use Rapid Slash. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't the Doppelganger use Rising Star? Like, he mimics your commands. Well, the reason for this is that he's delayed. And the other reason is that Rising Star only activates upon contact with the enemy. So, if I'm close to the enemy and I press right and I hold the attack button, that is Rising Star, and Vergil will launch the enemy into the air. However, if the enemy is airborne and I press right and I hold the attack button, Vergil will not use Rising Star. Instead, he will use Rapid Slash. Even though I am pressing right and holding the attack button, as you can see here, I can't use Rising Star because, well, I can't make contact with the enemy. They're airborne. And this is exactly why the Doppelganger can't use Rising Star. So I press right and I hold the attack button, that is Rising Star, and Vergil has already launched the enemy into the air. And the Doppelganger is delayed, and he only reacts to me pressing right and holding the attack button now, and you know, he tries to use Rising Star, but he can't because the enemy has already been launched into the air by Vergil previously. So the Doppelganger has no choice but to use Rapid Slash. So that's how this part of the combo works. Alright, so now you're supposed to change the Doppelganger's mode from slow to haste. So change his mode, this is very important, at around this point. Alright, so now that you've basically launched the enemy into the air with Rising Star, you immediately use Aerial Rave tool with the Yamato. And now, check this out, pay very close attention. So Vergil is on the left side, in midair, with the Yamato. And the Doppelganger is on the right side, on the ground, also with the Yamato. Obviously, because the Doppelganger can only use the Yamato. So, you're supposed to make this happen. Vergil is supposed to use Aerial Cleave with the Yamato, and the Doppelganger is supposed to use Void Slash on the ground. So, as you already know, when you're on the left side, in midair with the Yamato, aerial cleave is the left plus attack button. However, if you were to press the left plus attack button, in this case, what would happen is Vergil will use aerial cleave, because, you know, left plus attack button is aerial cleave. However, the doppelganger, who's on the right side, on the ground, would use rapid slash. And why is that? It's because the doppelganger is on the right side, on the ground, like I said, and if you have the Yamato and you're on the right side on the ground and you press the left plus attack button, that is rapid slash, as you already know. So left plus attack button on the right side on the ground with the Yamato is rapid slash, and the doppelganger reacts to your commands, so obviously when you press the left plus attack button, he will use rapid slash. So how do we circumvent that? It's very simple. Instead of pressing left plus attack button while in the air, we simply press right plus left plus attack button, or in my case, D plus A plus left mouse button. This will still cause Vergil to use aerial cleave. However, the doppelganger, who is on the right side on the ground, will end up using void slash. And the reason for this is when you're on the right side on the ground with the Yamato and you press right plus left plus attack button, or in my case, D plus A plus left mouse button, that is void slash. And obviously the doppelganger reacts to your commands, so he will use void slash, and he will basically prevent the enemy from falling to the ground. So the doppelganger will catch the enemy with void slash. And this is the exact reason why I told you have to switch the doppelganger's mode from slow to haste, because if the doppelganger mode is still slow while you're doing this part, he won't react to your commands immediately. He will be delayed by approximately half a second. So when you press right plus left plus attack button, Vergil's doppelganger will use void slash, but he will do it too late, and the enemy will have already fallen to the ground. So that's why you gotta change the doppelganger's mode from slow to haste before you actually start inputting the, you know, right plus left plus attack button. So that's basically how it works. I also want to bring up this one other thing that no one really cares about, but I find it kind of interesting. So you might be wondering, is it really necessary to use aerial rave 2 after using rising star, you know, before aerial cleave? And yes it is, and let me explain. So if you were to use aerial cleave immediately after using rising star, like, you input void slash, you press right plus left plus attack button immediately after using rising star, like you use aerial cleave, what's going to happen if you do this is the doppelganger will not react at all. So why is that? Well, the reason is the doppelganger will be too busy sheathing his sword, because the doppelganger has just finished using rapid slash and is now sheathing his sword. So when Vergil is sheathing his sword, he doesn't react to any melee commands. You can see here I'm pressing S plus W plus left mouse button, or well, back plus forward plus attack button, and I'm trying to use void slash while Vergil is sheathing his sword, but it simply doesn't work, and he doesn't react to me, you know, pressing back plus forward plus attack button. He only reacts when he's completely done sheathing his sword. So yeah. So this is exactly what happens with the doppelganger. So when I use rising star, if I choose to use, you know, aerial cleave immediately and I press right plus left plus attack button, Vergil's doppelganger will not react because he will be too busy sheathing his sword. Only after he's done sheathing his sword will he react, and that's exactly why you gotta use aerial rave 2 to give the doppelganger time to sheath his sword. So aerial rave 2 basically buys time for the doppelganger to finish sheathing his sword, which is why we gotta use aerial rave 2 as a filler to compensate, basically, to give the doppelganger time to sheath his sword, and then we use aerial cleave. Because, you know, by that time, the doppelganger will have already finished sheathing his sword, and he will be ready to react to void slash. So yeah. Alright, so now that you've basically used aerial cleave to pin the enemy to the ground, and now that the doppelganger has basically caught the enemy with void slash, you immediately deactivate the doppelganger, and at the same time, in that same millisecond, you immediately summon the doppelganger once again. So you summon the slow version of the doppelganger, who is slightly delayed. This will basically cause the enemy to get launched into the air, so, the enemy will get launched with the doppelganger being summoned, and now you let go of the lock-on, and you use Trick Up to propel yourself into the air. At this point, you press left and you hold the attack button slightly. So, basically, look at this. Vergil is on the left side in the air with the Yamato. When you press left plus attack button while you're on the left side in the air with the Yamato, that is aerial cleave. But when you're on the left side on the ground with the Yamato and you press left plus attack button, that is upper/1. But you want the doppelganger to use upper/2, and upper/2 is basically left plus holding the attack button. So you gotta hold the attack button while using aerial cleave. So again, you use Trick Up, and you basically press left and you hold the attack button a little. This will cause Vergil to use aerial cleave and his doppelganger to use upper/2 to launch the enemy into the air. At this point, you immediately change the doppelganger's mode from slow to haste the moment you pin the enemy to the ground with aerial cleave, and now you use rapid slash. So you basically press right plus attack button, and while using rapid slash, you press the attack button twice, and then you make a slight pause. So the reason you gotta press the attack button twice while using rapid slash is so that Vergil's doppelganger, who is in the air, uses the first 2 hits of Aerial Rave 2 with the Yamato. So Aerial Rave 2, as you already know, is attack button, pause, and then you press the attack button one more time, and Vergil will use this roulette spin. So basically, again, let's recap. So the moment you hit the enemy, the moment you pin the enemy to the ground with aerial cleave, you immediately change the doppelganger's mode from slow to haste, and this is required so that the doppelganger can immediately react to what you're about to press. So now you basically change the doppelganger's mode and you use rapid slash, but you press right plus attack button. So while using rapid slash, you press the attack button twice, and now you make a slight pause. And this is required because, as we've already established, Aerial Rave 2 is attack button, pause, and then you press the attack button again. So, again, you press the attack button twice while using rapid slash so that the doppelganger can use the first 2 hits of Aerial Rave 2. You make this pause because it's required, and now after this pause, you press the attack button one more time and you hold it. This will cause the doppelganger to use the 3rd hit of Aerial Rave 2, which is this roulette spin. And you keep holding the attack button, you keep holding it, and the millisecond Vergil sheathes his sword and this spark appears, you make sure to release the attack button so that you can do this perfect judgment cut. If you mistime it, what's going to happen is Vergil will use a regular judgment cut and the combo will fail. So you need to have this perfect timing, as was the case with the Void combo and a lot of other combos. You really got to know when to release the attack button. Alright, so now that you've used this perfect judgment cut with the doppelganger, you immediately input the blistering blades to basically suspend the enemy in the air, and you simultaneously use judgment cut end, and that is the end of the pit combo. Obviously, I don't think I need to mention this, but if you don't switch to Doppelganger's mode, what's going to happen is he'll be delayed and he won't immediately react to what you're pressing, so it's of paramount importance that you change his mode from slow to haste, so yeah. Alright, so this is an issue that can happen, it happened quite a few times, so I couldn't cancel lunar phase because of the distance, so I literally could not use enemy step because I wasn't close enough to the enemy. As you already know, enemy step only works if you're very close to the enemy. If you're not close enough, if you're too high up in the air, or the enemy is too high up in the air, or you're too far away from them distance-wise, you won't be able to jump cancel. You won't be able to use enemy steps. So in all of these instances, you can see how I'm pressing jump, but I simply cannot enemy step. I can't jump cancel my lunar phase, so I just end up using the entirety of lunar phase. And this is simply really annoying. That's just something that can, well, transpire. Here you can see how I use trig down too late. So like I said, you're supposed to touch the enemy with Starfall, and then immediately use Trig Down. But in all these instances, I basically use Starfall, and I use the entirety of it, and I blow the enemy away, and then I use Trig Down. So like I said, you're supposed to use Trig Down incredibly early. I know it may seem kind of daunting, because, you know, it's like you gotta press, like back plus forward plus trig button, or in this case, it's like, right plus left or whatever, left plus right, but it doesn't really matter. You can do it, believe me. Here you can see the same thing, or at least it's really similar. I basically forgot to cancel Starfall, so yeah. Alright, so this is an issue that happens so many times, and I'm almost ashamed, I'm almost embarrassed that I have to mention this, but in all of these instances, you'll see how Rapid Slash causes Vergil to go right underneath the enemy. So, in other words, I use Rapid Slash way too early and the enemy doesn't get grazed. You need to graze the enemy with Rapid Slash to make sure they don't fall to the ground. And this is why I said how you're supposed to wait a fraction of a second before using Rapid Slash, right? And, after Starfall, basically. And as you can see in all these instances, apparently I use Rapid Slash way too early. And what happens is, well, the enemy goes, the Vergil goes right underneath the enemy, so yeah. But conversely, you have this. So here you can see how I use Rapid Slash too late. So I waited too long, and as a result, the enemy fell to the ground before I could even catch them with Rapid Slash. So this is one thing that can definitely happen. Alright, so here you can see another incredibly common mistake, and it is just something that drives me crazy. It is almost as common as, or maybe, if not more common, I'd say it's more common, honestly, than the Rapid Slash issue. So here I use Rapid Slash instead of Void Slash. And oh boy. So as you already know, when you're facing the enemy straight, like when the enemy is in front of you like this, Void Slash is back plus forward plus attack button, or S plus W plus left mouse button. And that's Void Slash. And Rapid Slash is only forward plus attack button, or well, W plus left mouse button in my case. But as you can see, in all of these instances, I am clearly pressing S plus W plus left mouse button, or well, back plus forward plus attack button. But instead of Void Slash, Vergil always ends up using Rapid Slash. So it's like, even though I'm pressing S plus W plus attack button, the game only registers me pressing W plus attack button. So it doesn't register me pressing S, it doesn't register me pressing back, and as a result, Vergil ends up using Rapid Slash instead of Void Slash. One possible explanation for this is that maybe I'm simply pressing S, or I'm pressing back too early. But this doesn't make sense because, as you can see, in all these instances, I clearly press S after using Trig Down, so after I descend to the ground, and Vergil should be able to use Void Slash the moment I basically inputted while on the ground. It's not like I pressed S while in the air, then I would totally understand it, but I'm on the ground, I used Trig Down, and I didn't input Void Slash too early. I waited for Vergil to use Trig Down and finish it, and now, while on the ground, I input Void Slash. And it still does not register me pressing back. I don't know why. And here you can see this annoying issue where I use a Void Slash way too late, so the enemy's feet are touching the ground, like before Void Slash, and by the same token, you'll see in the same instance how I am too close to the end of the stage, like the edge of the stage. So when I call the Doppelganger, he's too close to me, and he's also too close to the enemy. So when I use Rising Star, what ends up happening is I don't get to launch the enemy high up enough in the air before the Doppelganger can basically, like, you can see how the Doppelganger grazes the enemy with Rapid Slash. Like, after I use Rising Star, you can see how the Doppelganger uses Rapid Slash and he grazes the enemy, and this also causes the enemy to not gain enough altitude, so they stay here, you know? And this is because Vergil's Doppelganger was way too close to the enemy before using Rapid Slash, and this is because I was too close to the edge of the stage. So, like I said, the Doppelganger was too close to the enemy, and I use Rising Star to launch the enemy into the air, but since Vergil's Doppelganger is too close, he ends up grazing the enemy with Rapid Slash, not letting them gain enough altitude, so that's something that can happen. Though, like I said, this mostly happens if you do this combo outside of the void, or if you're at the edge of the void or something. It shouldn't be an issue otherwise. This is an age-old mistake. It's something that keeps happening, and I think it's a camera issue. It happens in almost every combo. So the Doppelganger simply doesn't move. Like, they just refuse to move no matter what I do. Like I said, I'm about 50, not 50, I'm about 90% sure this is a camera issue, so let's just leave it at that. Alright, so here you can see how the Doppelganger ends up using Rapid Slash instead of Void Slash. So, like I said, you're supposed to press right plus left plus attack button so that, you know, Vergil can use Aerial Cleave and his Doppelganger can use Void Slash. Because, like I said, right plus left plus attack button on the right side on the ground with the Yamato is Void Slash. However, even though I'm pressing that, Vergil's Doppelganger is doing Rapid Slash, and Rapid Slash, when you're on the right side on the ground with the Yamato, is the left plus attack button. So the game is once again not registering me pressing right plus left plus attack button. It's only registering left plus attack button, even though I'm clearly pressing that. And I'm guessing maybe this is because I don't know, maybe I press right too early. Maybe I should have waited a little for Vergil's Doppelganger to be done sheathing his sword or something. I really couldn't tell you. Sometimes this will happen, so I press right plus left plus attack button, and I want to use Aerial Cleave, but Vergil ends up using the last hit of Aerial Rave 2 instead. So I think this can happen if you don't press right plus left plus attack button early enough. Like, I feel like for some reason I input this right plus left plus attack button. Like, I think that I pressed the attack button first, and this caused Vergil to use the last hit of Aerial Rave 2, and then I pressed right plus left plus attack button. So that's what I think happened here, but I'm not entirely certain, because if you know, upon closer inspection, you can definitely see me pressing right, then left, and then attack button. And still, you know, Vergil doesn't do Aerial Cleave. So this could also be another camera issue. You never know. Honestly, I have no idea. Here you can see another mistake that I don't know where it falls on the, you know, mistake frequency chart, but it can definitely happen. So here you can see how, after using Void Slash, I try to use Rising Star with Vergil, which, as you already know, is right plus holding the attack button. Yet, Vergil ends up using Rapid Slash instead, and as we've already established, Rising Star can only be executed upon contact with the enemy. If the enemy is too high up in the air, or you're too far away from the enemy, you won't be able to use Rising Star. Even though you're pressing right and holding the attack button, Vergil will use Rapid Slash instead of Rising Star. And in this instance, you can see how the enemy is too high up on the Void Slash. They are at a very high altitude, so when I attempt to use Rising Star, I go right underneath the enemy, because they're too high up on the Void Slash, and I can't make contact with them properly. This is just something that you seemingly can't affect in any way, and it is one of those incredibly annoying issues. And like I said, it's not uncommon. Just like every mistake in this combo, everything can happen 50 billion times. So, yeah. Alright, so this can also happen quite a few times. Alright, so let me explain. I've already explained this whole setup a billion times, not just in this combo, but in every other combo where this setup appears. Like I said, the slow version of the Doppelganger is delayed, so he will react to what you're pressing about half a second later. Alright? So, when you use Rising Star, which is right plus holding the attack button, Vergil will react first, and he will basically launch the enemy into the air with Rising Star. The Doppelganger will subsequently try to use the same move, but he won't be able to use Rising Star because the enemy will already be in the air, right? And the Doppelganger will have no choice but to use Rapid Slash, as you already know, because the enemy has already been launched into the air by Vergil, and this Doppelganger is delayed, so he, you know what happens. However, this instance, or well, these instances, because there are multiple recorded instances of this, so basically what ends up happening is Vergil does Rising Star, and he launches the enemy into the air. However, Vergil's Doppelganger is too close to Vergil, and by the same token, he's too close to the enemy when he's summoned. And as a result, because the Doppelganger is so close to the enemy, he does Rising Star, even though, like, bro, this is kind of insane if you really think about it. Basically, I didn't launch the enemy high up enough into the air before Vergil's Doppelganger could start reacting. So I only managed to use the first hit of Rising Star, which did launch the enemy into the air, but not fast enough and not high up enough. So the Doppelganger now reacts. Finally, he starts reacting to my commands, and he makes contact with the enemy because the enemy wasn't high up enough in the air. You know what I mean? So this is why this happens. Basically, Vergil's Doppelganger is too close to the enemy when he's summoned, and as a result, he does Rising Star. Even though he's delayed, he makes contact with the enemy because I didn't get to launch the enemy high up enough in the air. So this is something that can definitely happen. Here you can see how the Doppelganger basically does nothing. So he doesn't do anything. And like I said, this can happen a lot, as is the case with every single mistake in this combo. So you're pressing right plus left plus attack button, you're pressing all of this, but the Doppelganger just stays there. He's just standing there menacingly, watching you, laughing at you, mocking you for being, I don't know, man. Alright, so this is just rich, bro. This is just a riot. So somehow, apparently, I don't know how, but I wasn't close enough to the enemy. So when I summoned the Doppelganger, the Doppelganger being summoned didn't launch the enemy into the air. Like I said, you're supposed to be close to the enemy, and then you summon the slow version of the Doppelganger. And as you already know, when you summon the Doppelganger, and you're very close to the enemy, the Doppelganger being summoned will launch the enemy into the air. But in this case, there was a lot of distance between me and the enemy, so when I summoned the Doppelganger, it didn't do anything, and the enemy didn't get launched into the air. Luckily, this isn't something that's very frequent, so yeah. Alright, so are you guys ready to see the most common mistake in the second part of this combo? I don't think anything comes close. So, there are two mistakes that come to mind. The one that I'll discuss after this one is like a close second. It's like a contender for, they're vying for, like most common mistake. But basically, here you can see aerial cleave fails. That's how I basically dubbed this. So, as you already know, when you are on the left side in the air with the Yamato, and you use aerial cleave, right? The way aerial cleave works is when you execute it, when you press left plus attack button, or in this case, right plus left plus attack button, aerial cleave will basically pin the enemy to the ground. So Vergil will basically, you'll see this gravitational pull. So you see this? It's like there's this weight. So Vergil basically pulls the enemy to the ground, with him, in a way. And that's how, he does that, and then he pins the enemy to the ground, and then there's this bounce back effect, right? However, this only works if Vergil and the enemy are on the same height, if they're at the same altitude. But in these cases, you'll notice one very big mistake. You'll see that Vergil is a lot lower compared to the enemy. So the enemy is higher up in the air than Vergil. And when Vergil attempts to use aerial cleave, you see that there's no weight. He can't pull the enemy towards, like, you know, he can't pin the enemy to the ground because the enemy is simply way higher up in the air than Vergil. And why does this happen? The way I see it, this happens when the enemy is too high up on the Void Slash. So they're too high up on the Void Slash, and you basically can't really, you know, do it. There is no way to affect the enemy's altitude on the Void Slash. There's nothing you can do. It's like RNG, basically. And, you know, because it's random, I don't know how to help you. This has happened so many times, and sometimes, in some cases, I could have sworn that the enemy wasn't too high up on the Void Slash. As you can see here, they seem relatively close to the ground, right? But apparently not. So when I use Rising Star, you'll see that the enemy is higher up in the air than Vergil. And I use Aerial Rave too, and I use this, and I try Aerial Cleave, but nope, I just can't pull the enemy towards the ground. I just cannot do it for the life of me. You know how I said how the first part of the combo is just excruciatingly difficult? And I think that, you know, there's no mistake about it. There's no doubt about it. But this is, like, at least with the Heaven combo and a lot of these difficult combos, if you are done with that one part, you can take a breather, like I said. But with this combo, you have all of these mistakes, and this one definitely takes the cake. I just don't know, man. So enjoy the slideshow of, I don't know, man, of instances, of fails. I don't even know. You know, it's just incredibly annoying.
Go to hell. It's over. 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 Go to hell. It's over.
Alright, so those were the aerial cleave fails, but there is another issue that is just as common. Well, I wouldn't say just as common, but, you know, they're you know, well, you just look at this, alright? So, in all of the following instances, you'll see one thing, and that one thing is basically this Void Slash fail. So what is the Void Slash fail? The Void Slash fail is very simple to explain. It's what happens when you actually pin the enemy to the ground with aerial cleave. However, the Doppelganger doesn't catch the enemy with Void Slash. So the Doppelganger does Void Slash. It's not mistimed. It's all perfect. However, the Void Slash doesn't catch the enemy, and it doesn't prevent the enemy from falling to the ground. So in other words, the enemy falls to the ground. And you might be thinking, well, you know, you can still continue the combo like this. You can still summon the Doppelganger, and you can still continue the combo. But at that point, Why even have the doppelganger? You don't even need the doppelganger. You can simply use aerial cleave, and then when the enemy is pinned to the ground, you just summon the doppelganger. So you don't even need this void slash doppel thing. The whole point of the combo, that's like the highlight of the combo, is the doppelganger catching the enemy with void slash, thus preventing them from falling to the ground. So if that fails, the whole combo fails. It's just not stylish anymore. So in terms of functionality, you don't even need the doppelganger at all. You can simply use rapid slash, you can use rising star, then use aerial cleave, but that's not the point. At that point, this becomes a completely different combo. So anyway, why does this happen? This happens because of one simple reason. The doppelganger simply isn't close enough to the enemy, so he can't use, he uses void slash, but the void slash doesn't catch the enemy because, well, the doppelganger was too far away from the enemy. And now why does that happen? How does that happen? Why is this a thing? So this is a thing because, as you can see, let me explain. So this is something that I explained for the Ruin combo, because this would also happen in the Ruin combo, just not as frequently for whatever reason. I don't know why, because it's the same setup. But basically, when you are very far away from the enemy, right, and you use rapid slash, you will basically, after you cut through the enemy, you will be very close to the enemy, right? However, if you're too close to the enemy before starting rapid slash, look at what's going to happen. You'll cut through the enemy, and now you will be very far away from the enemy because rapid slash took you very far. And now when you attempt to use void slash, what's going to happen is void slash won't catch the enemy because rapid slash took you too far. And this happened because when you started rapid slash, you were too close to the enemy, right? Now, with the Ruin combo, you could easily correct this because, well, because of one very simple factor. This, basically, you can just change the distance. So this setup is basically how you start the Ruin combo. So you can just choose not to be too close to the enemy. So you just choose this distance, and now you use the combo, and you can basically you can influence this. But with this combo, this setup occurs in the middle of the combo. So you can't alter the distance between you and the enemy, and, well, the doppelganger and the enemy. So the reason this happens is basically the doppelganger is too close to the enemy before he does rapid slash. And what happens is he's taken too far away from the enemy, and when he tries to use, void slash, it doesn't catch the enemy. And once again, just like with the previous mistake, just like with almost every mistake, you can't affect this. How can you? How could you? Like, how do you affect this? Like, you simply use trig down to descend to the ground, and you use void slash, and now you summon the doppelganger. That's all there is to it. Yet sometimes the doppelganger is too close to the enemy, sometimes he's too far from the enemy, and I have no idea what this depends on. The only theory I have is maybe when you use trig down and when you use void slash, maybe I'm doing it too early. Maybe I'm doing it too late. But we are talking frames here. Even if this really was the reason, like maybe I'm using void slash 2 frames too early, or 2 frames too late, or maybe I'm using trig down 1 frame too early or too late, it is immaterial because you cannot have any influence on this. It is completely random. It is just RNG. And this is the second most common mistake. I don't even know if it's the second most common mistake, because I think it's on the same level of frequency as the previous mistake with the aerial cleave fail. So yeah, like I said, void slash can fail, but the combo can still work. And this is basically one example of that. But like I said, if the void slash fails, if the doppelganger void slash fails, the combo fails from a style perspective. So yeah. Like I said, like basically here you can see how I didn't hold the attack button while using aerial cleave, so what ended up happening was the doppelganger used /1 instead of /2, and as a result the doppelganger wasn't launched into the air, so he couldn't use aerial rave 2. So like I said, left plus attack button on the ground on the left side with the Yamato is /1. But holding the attack button, like left plus holding the attack button, is /2. And this Vergil will launch the doppelganger into the air, and he will be able to use aerial rave 2, which is why when you use trick up, you're supposed to press left and hold the attack button a little. So yeah. Here you can see how the doppelganger ended up using aerial rave 1 instead of 2. So aerial rave 1 is just mashing the attack button like a maniac with the Yamato in the air. No pauses. However, like I said, you need, aerial rave 2 is basically attack button, pause, and then you press the attack button again for this roulette spin and all. So, like I said, when you use rapid slash, you press right plus attack button, so that Vergil's doppelganger can use the first 2 hits of aerial rave 2. Then you make a pause, which is required, and then after this pause, you press the attack button one more time and you hold it. But in this case, as you can see, I basically pressed right and I kept mashing the attack button like a maniac, like, I don't know, 5 to 6 times, and what ended up happening was there was no pause, and the doppelganger ended up using aerial rave 1 instead of 2. So, yeah. Here you can see, like, how I did a regular judgment cut instead of a perfect one. If you do a regular judgment cut, Vergil will use this backdash, and the doppelganger will not spawn next to him, and the enemy will basically lose altitude and fall to the ground. Like I said, you need to have perfect timing. So when you hold the attack button, you keep holding it and you release it in the exact moment that you see the spark that Vergil basically, when he puts the sword back in its sheath, back in its scabbard. So, yeah. This could have worked. This was almost perfect, but like I said, aerial cleave just completely missed. And as you can see, I used a regular judgment cut instead of a perfect one. Like I said, those 2 main mistakes that you can encounter in the second part of the combo, like the aerial cleave fail and the void slash fail? Like I said, even if you make even if you can't, basically pin the enemy to the ground with aerial cleave, the enemy will still fall to the ground on their own. And you can basically, summon the doppelganger, and this will launch him into the air, and you can continue the combo. Same as with the void slash fail. But the combo just completely fails from a style perspective. It's just, you might as well, you don't even need the doppelganger to use this. Like, imagine just using Rising Star, and then not even using, you just use aerial cleave and it doesn't work, and, it's just a fail, So even though it's not functionally a fail, it is a fail. Here you can see something that I almost never, like a mistake that I almost never make. I input and released the blistering blades way too early. So the enemy ended up hitting the ground before I could actually use Judgment Cut End. I never, ever make this mistake. I don't even know. Like, this must be the most vexing thing on the planet. Like, when you fail something that's not even a fail. Like, the only thing you need to do is throw the mirage blades, like release the blistering blades the moment the enemy starts falling and losing altitude and they're close to the ground. And then, basically, I don't know how I did that. That's just on me. And finally, if you're a real one, you already know, you're well aware, you're very well acquainted with this issue. I use air trick instead of judgment cut end. This happened with the void combo. This happened with the blue combo. This happened with the streak combo, the moist combo, the market combo. Almost every combo where you're supposed to use Judgment Cut End or Deep Stinger, you end up using, as you already know, using any of the, like let's say Judgment Cut End or Hell on Earth or Deep Stinger, you basically lock on, so you press Shift, and you press forward plus trig button plus attack button. Or in my case, I lock on and I press W plus E plus left mouse button. That's how it works. And As you can see, that is exactly what I'm pressing. However, Vergil ends up teleporting to the enemy using Air Trick instead of using Judgment Cut End. And Air Trick is just locking on and pressing the trig button. So it's like Shift plus E. But I am clearly pressing Shift plus W plus E plus left mouse button. And even though I'm pressing all of this, the game registers me. I don't know if this is a camera issue or, you know, it's actually probably a misinput, but we're talking about frames here. Like I said, this is not something that you can have any effect over because, like I said, it's just, it happens so fast. If you look at my keyboard, and I'll zoom this in, and my mouse as well, you can see that I press these buttons, these 3 buttons, at the exact same time. I didn't press anything earlier. If I had pressed lock on plus trig button, if I had pressed Shift plus E earlier than I pressed W or the left mouse button, I would understand why the game registered me as pressing, you know, as using Air Trick. But in these examples, you can clearly see that I pressed them at the exact same picosecond. And it still doesn't matter. And in this instance, if you pay very close attention, you'll see how I input everything at the exact same time, like literally at the exact same time, and Vergil doesn't even use Air Trick here. He just uses one hit with the Amato. Meaning that the game didn't give a fuck about any of the things I pressed. It didn't register me pressing W or E, it just registered me pressing the attack button. This is something that happens so frequently that it is just nauseating. And imagine, like I said, you know this combo is incredibly difficult. It's agonizing. To be completely honest, I don't even recommend doing this combo at all. At least not the first part. Because imagine doing the first part of the combo, which is already just hell on earth. And then you get to the second part, and you have so many mistakes. You have so many windows where you can just destroy everything, right? And you can't even affect it, you can't explain it, and then you get to this part, the very end of the combo. This will probably have taken you like hours, like 6 hours of, this probably would, I don't, man, I can't even talk, man. I just remember how when I did this combo for the first time, it took me like 6 hours or so. Not really, I don't know. But I remember just literally wanting to cry. Like, I punched my table. I was, you know, this is one of those instances, this is one of those combos where you really got to think, why am I doing this? What is the point? This is just, I'm not making money off of this. Nobody will care to watch this. Nobody cares about this, right? Nobody cares about a pretty looking combo. Like, you know, you start reevaluating your life choices, like, what the fuck am I even doing? Like, this is so niche, it's so obscure. It's like post-combo analysis clarity. Like, literally post-combo clarity, man. I don't know, but, you know, the thing is, like, if I'm having such a hard time replicating already existing combos, then how difficult was it for the actual creators of these combos? Like, how do you even come up with these setups? I consider myself good at the game. Like, I'm in tune with Vergil. I'm in tune with his mechanics. I know how this game works. I know the ins and outs, well, for the most part. And I still can't make a setup of my own that I haven't seen already. I can only mix up, I can only, you know, replicate already existing setups that other people have created, and I can just combine them. You know, I guess I lack creativity or something, but how do you even visualize this in your head and try to do it not knowing if it'll even work? Like, how can you even be sure that this whole thing can work? Like, if I tried a setup and it failed like 4 times, I would simply think, all right, this apparently can't work the way I thought it could in my head. So I would simply give up, you know? But yeah, this combo is just incredibly, incredibly difficult. But be that as it may, it's not like it's completely impossible to do. Because, you know, as you can see, there have obviously been multiple instances where I did this correctly. And sometimes I'm even, like I said, you know, Sometimes I'm able to do this correctly on my first try, but it's incredibly, incredibly rare. And I think that's all she wrote. I don't know if there's anything more I can add. My voice is literally, like, given out. Yeah, that's the pit combo, everyone. Bye.